Hey everyone, Jason from Alphatone Audio here. Hope everyone's enjoying their new year so far. I know we're only a few days into it, but I'm already liking this year a lot better than I liked last year. And I think a lot of you out there would tend to agree with me. So one of the many things that wasn't very great about last year is no live music. And there were a lot of musicians just stuck home with lots of extra time on their hands. But one of the upsides to that is they finally had some time to do some upgrades, some maintenance, some side grades, whatever. Basically all these things that they always wanted to do with their gear, they finally had a chance to get that done. So as a result, I had hundreds of conversations with all kinds of different musicians talking about what they should do, what are good upgrade paths, what direction they should take whatsoever. And I really love just talking to different musicians about how they're using gear to make their music. I always like to hear the fresh perspectives, and it gives me good ideas for stuff to do with my own gear and my own music. So I will say, after those hundreds of conversations I had with all those players out there, I noticed about 5 different trends, and that's what I want to talk about today, is 5 different ways that you can take your rig in 2021. Number 1, go big. Get all the pedals you've ever wanted, get them onto the board, get the bigger pedal board if you need to. Maybe this is the year you finally make the jump and go to like a loop switcher, whatever you want, and go for it. You want it to do the 2 amps, you want to go stereo amps, you want to go wet dry, you want to go wet dry wet, you want 4 cable method, you want the automated switching, you want all that stuff. Great, go for it. Build the biggest monster rig you can possibly think of and enjoy all the tones that go along with it. Just a couple things to think about though before you go off the deep end on your rig. 1, you have to think about power, first of all, especially on your pedal board. If you're going to start adding a lot more stuff on there, especially like loop switchers, which tend to take like lots and lots of juice, like some of the newer digital pedals out there, you're going to have to power it somehow. You could always go with some kind of power strip if you have to put it on there, and use some of the wall warts, as long as you're careful not to introduce noise. You may just have to add a secondary power supply, or you may just have to take one of your older ones and upgrade it to like one of the newer ones that just have a lot more milliamps of current on each particular output. Just to make sure that you have plenty of power and everything, so everything has plenty of headroom and is sounding good. The other thing is you need to think of a way of how you're going to manage all this extra gear, particularly if you're going to start bringing like a loop switcher or something into the picture. I had quite a few customers come to me and say, hey, I want to get this 10 amp, or sorry, this 10 loop switcher, but I have like 14 pedals on my board. Like, what am I going to do? And it's certainly, you can do it. You don't always have to have this rule of like 1 pedal per loop. You can, put 2, even like 3 pedals in a loop. If you have an always on pedal, like a buffer or an overdrive or something like that, it doesn't have to go in a loop at all. You just come to the board, go straight into that always on pedal, and then go into your loop switcher from there. Not everything has to be controlled. So there's no real rules around it. There's tons of ways to do it, tons of options at your disposal. Just get it straight in your head. Think about your signal flow. Make sure everything is as clean, as efficient, and make sure that you can manage things the way you need to, especially when setting up like a loop switcher. Are you going to run it in like the standard stomp box mode? Are you just going to set up like 10 or 12 of your core sounds? Are you actually going to do like hundreds of individual presets to go out with like a really big set list? Like say you're in a wedding band or a cover band, and then you got like 400 presets and you just want to step through all night. All of these are very valid. Just think about the way that you want to start interfacing with it and set it up accordingly. Make sure that whatever loop switcher you go with is going to be able to accommodate those features for you. Number 2, go small. Let's say you did go big before and you've already got all the pedals and the switching and the amps and all that stuff, and it's just too much. It's just too much to carry, it costs you too much money, it's too much to maintain, and at the end of the day, I've had some people say it just gets in the way of them making music. It's too much mental overhead to deal with and you want to scale it down. That's totally fine. And you can start just like literally by taking stuff out of your rig. That 1 pedal that you only use like maybe like once a night or like once a week, you can just get rid of it and try to figure out some other way to get that sound. Just go without it. One of the things you can do is like literally go small. You can, if you have a pedal that's a full-size pedal, can you find a smaller version of that pedal? Many pedal formats have become pretty popular. Almost every manufacturer is doing one nowadays. I've saw lots of pedal boards that are just like all mini pedals that are incredibly small. So now you're looking at something that weighs from like 40 to 50 pounds, and you can scale all the way down that you can just fit in your backpack. You don't have to start making dedicated trips from the car to the stage anymore. Everything's just compact and it's with you all the time. Number 3, multi-effects. This is actually a cool way that you can kind of go big and go small at the same time, whereas you're taking a single pedal on your pedal board and it has the possibility of giving you lots and lots of additional tones. And if you look at like some of the more complicated pedals, like say an Eventide H9, Line 6 HX Stomp, something like that, they have like hundreds and hundreds of potential tones in there that you can use. And even something like an H9 can take the place of like 4 or 5 other different modulation effects easily. Now, if you're not into the digital pedals, you're not into like the menu diving and all the complexity these pedals have, that's totally fine. fine, I understand, but you don't always have to go with something like that. Even something simple like, say, a Strymon Flint, which is just reverb and tremolo, is a multi-effect pedal, and it just maybe saves you a switch or two, saves you a couple knobs, saves you one port on a power supply, whatever. Just any way that you can kind of simplify your life is a good thing. And if you can do it with a multi-effect, why not? One of the other cool things you can do with multi-effects is, because some of the more complex ones are all MIDI enabled, you can actually start to get into like a lot of switching without having to go to a dedicated audio loop switcher. If you get like some kind of a small MIDI only switcher, something like the Quartz from Sela Effects, anything from Disaster Area Designs, the RJM MIDI switchers, whatever, something that's basically just switching MIDI, you can do a lot of preset changes, including just like bypassing and unbypassing your effects. So it gives you a really good middle ground that you can get a lot of control with just a couple different foot switches without having to add a lot of complexity. So there's a lot of different ways you can take the multi-effect route. You can go big, you can go small, you can add a lot of controls, lots of opportunities for expression pedals in there as well. Just the sky's the limit nowadays with what's out there. Number 4, get more out of what you already have. For example, if you have an amp and you have an effects loop and you've never ever used it, try to implement the 4-cable method. All you need are a couple extra cables. This is something that can be really beneficial to your tone, especially if you tend to use a lot of preamp gain and you also like a lot of time-based effects. You may find that you get a lot of extra clarity in your effects and just a much different tone overall. Very easy to experiment with too. And it just, like I said, costs you nothing but a couple extra guitar cables, which hopefully you have lying around anyway. You could add an expression pedal into your rig, assuming one of your pedals has an expression pedal port. You could find a whole new way to play more expressively. You could get a pedal that you already own modified. For example, I own a couple pedals that have been modified by Analog Man. I know Alchemy Audio also does a lot of great mods on a lot of great pedals. And these mods could be anything simple from just like replacing some cheap components with something high quality that basically gives you a stronger fundamental tone out of your pedal, to adding completely new features to your pedal. And there's tons of people out there doing tons of mods on all kinds of different pedals. So a little bit of searching around, I'm sure you'll find something interesting. You could also just not do anything with your pedal board at all, and you could just look more at your instrument. Like maybe get a professional setup done, or something even more, a little bit more drastic, like maybe you need some new frets put in. You could change out your pickups, or even just something as simple as changing a capacitor value on your tone knob could get you a little bit closer to finding the tone that you want. Lots of things are possible, and not everything has to be large. Just take a look at what you have and see if you can make small improvements. Number 5, nothing. Don't do anything at all. If everything you have is working and you like it and it sounds good and everything's maintained well, then there's really no need to change it. I think people get into this mindset that they always have to be putting pedals on and off their board and experimenting. And, as a musician, it is nice to always be experimenting, looking for new ideas, looking for new tones, but that doesn't always have to translate to taking pedals on and off a pedal board or switching out amplifiers or something like that. Experimentation is always good and it's always key, but that's not the only way that you can actually look for other ways to, make more music and grow as a musician and as a player. That's my list for today. I hope this has been helpful and given you a little bit of insight on how you want to take your music and your gear into 2021. And certainly I hope everyone gets back on stage so we can all come out and see each other and make some music again real soon. And as I said, I love to hear from people. So if you have any questions whatsoever, hit me up in the comments, hit me up on my Facebook page, hit me up on my main website, whatever. I'm always happy to hear from you. I always try to answer as many questions as I can. If you found this helpful, please feel to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.